On August the 1st, 527, the 45-year-old Justinian I became so Augustus, the new emperor of Eastern Rome. His first action was to reiterate the religious policy of Justin in a firmly Chalcedonian edict. Justinian inherited an empire in great shape with a full treasury, but for now he needed to deal with the Persian War. Since the front now stretched from Arabia to the Caucasus, the Eastern army was split in two components. One for Mesopotamia under the newly appointed Belisarius, and one in Armenia under Citas. Belisarius was defeated at Thanaris and retreated to Dara, while the Sasanian Arab clients continued their assaults on Syria. As the war was raging, several officials, including Tribonian and John the Cappadocian, worked on a new project, the Codex Justinianus. This great legal work was a complete revision and adaptation of Roman law and thus surpassed the previous Theodosian code. Justinian also decided to act against the remaining pagans, restricting their rights. A consequence of that was the closure of the Neoplatonic Academy of Athens. In the Balkans, the Gepid Mundus entered the service of the emperor and repelled Bulgar incursions. The war continued with deep Lakhmid raids in Syria and the Samaritan revolt in Judea. The emperor proclaimed a new Ghassanid king to rule over all Arab allies of the empire, who subsequently helped to crush the rebels. In Vandal Africa, the Roman-friendly king Hilderic was imprisoned by Gelimer. Justinian demanded his restoration, or at least that he be sent to Constantinople, which the new king refused, and the relations fell apart. At the fortress of Dara, the forces of both empires, joined by their respective Arab contingents, clashed. The outnumbered Belisarius won a decisive victory, while further north, Citas triumphed against a larger force as well. The Samaritan rebellion was put to an end. However, the victory at Dara was followed by a defeat at Callinicum. For this failure, Belisarius was recalled to Constantinople, and Mundus was to replace him in the east. But while the Persians revealed themselves unable to exploit their victory, Kavad I died, and fighting slowed down. In Constantinople, a series of events triggered protests in the Hippodrome, which degenerated into the so-called Nicaea riots. Justinian attempted to calm the mob down by accepting to dismiss unpopular officials such as Tribonian and especially the efficient tax collector John the Cappadocian. But this was not enough. Now the Blues and the Greens elevated Anastasius' nephew Hypatius as emperor, and buildings around the Hippodrome were set on fire. Justinian, facing the same situation as Zeno in 475, considered fleeing the capital. Theodora, for her part, called for decisive action. The emperor, convinced, ordered Belisarius and Mundus, who had just arrived with reinforcements, to suppress the sedition. Due to several days of uncontained agitation, the troops had to massacre over 30,000 people to end the Nicaea riots. This event had caused much destruction in and around the Hippodrome. The great church of Constantinople, rebuilt from a previous fire under Theodosius II, was now destroyed again. The emperor called for Anthemius of Tralles and Isidore of Miletus to design a new basilica. After having supplanted the Theodosian code with his own, Justinian would now surpass his predecessor in architectural work as well. And about the Theodosian code, Tribonian and John the Cappadocian would not wait long before being reinstated. Justinian's wife was a Monophysite, and she managed to influence her husband enough to make him more willing to engage in diplomacy. The monarch invited several non-Chalcedonian leaders to the capital in an attempt to heal the church. Severus of Antioch refused, but with enough representatives, the negotiations took place. Being divided among themselves, the perceived heretics made the task particularly difficult. In the end, nothing of note was accomplished. The newly crowned Khosrow wished to end the war. Territories would be left unchanged, while Justinian provided some 11,000 pounds of gold to secure the so-called endless peace. Such a relief on the eastern border allowed the state to allocate resources elsewhere. For defying imperial authority, Gelimer had to be punished, and plans were made to launch an invasion of Africa. It was received with fierce opposition by many high officials, among them John the Cappadocian. Previous attacks on the Vandalic kingdom had been disastrous, but Justinian was unmoved. Alongside preparations, rebellions were encouraged in Tripolitania and Sardinia. The 16,000-man expedition set sail under the command of Belisarius. The fleet resupplied in a friendly Ostrogothic Sicily, and wishing to avoid naval confrontation, Belisarius landed at a good distance south of Carthage. One thing had to be clear: the Romans were here as liberators. The local population cooperated with the imperial army, and the march north was easy. A first Vandalic force under Gelimer's brother was wiped out at Adecimum. Welcomed by the Carthaginians, the Roman troops prepared for defense of the city. Vandal reinforcements came back from Sardinia. Just outside of Carthage, at Tricamarum, the Romans prevailed, killing another brother of Gelimer. The latter fled west, and the Romans pursued. While imperial forces reclaimed Africa, further compilation of Roman law gave birth to two new books: the Institutes and the Digesta, which in turn, combined with the earlier Codex Justinianus, created the second edition of what was later named the Corpus Juris Civilis. Future laws would be published in a fourth book called the Novellae. Eventually, Gelimer was captured, and a new administration was set up under a Praetorian prefect, Solomon, who started to suppress the rebellious Berber tribes. Returning to Constantinople with the Vandal king and many treasures from the sack of Rome, Belisarius was granted a triumph as well as the consulship for the year 535. Gelimer was exiled, while parts of his former soldiers were deployed on the Persian frontier. Severus of Antioch finally accepted Justinian's invitation and arrived in the capital from Egypt, accompanied by Alexandria's patriarch, Theodosius. In Italy, Queen Amalasuntha ruled alone since her son's premature death. She was murdered by a rival, Theodahad. The Ostrogoths had already occupied the Vandalic part of Sicily and refused to give it to the Romans. But the death of the friendly queen delivered a clear casus belli to Justinian. The restoration of the Roman Empire became the ultimate goal for the emperor. In the Balkans, Justiniana Prima was founded and became the capital of both the Diocese of Dacia and the Praetorian Prefecture of Illyricum, thus replacing Thessalonica and moving the armies closer to the Danube. These troops, still under the command of Mundus, advanced in Dalmatia to take Salona from the Goths. Further south, Belisarius crossed the sea and took control of Sicily. The Pope arrived in Constantinople as an ambassador to Theodahad. Finding Monophysites in positions of power, he clashed with them. Agapetus convinced Justinian to rally to his side and retake a strong Chalcedonian position. Both patriarchs, Anthimus and Theodosius, were replaced by Chalcedonians and were excommunicated alongside Severus of Antioch. Agapetus passed away on his return to Italy. In 536, a strange natural phenomenon occurred. During this year, a most dread portent took place. for the sun gave forth its light without brightness like the moon, and it seemed exceedingly like the sun in eclipse, for the beams it shed were not clear. This event coincided with widespread crop failures, famines, colder temperatures, unusual snowfall, and droughts. A mutiny in Africa forced Governor Solomon to flee. With Carthage threatened, Belisarius intervened and defeated the rebels in open battle. Germanus, Justinian's cousin, arrived to relieve Belisarius and crush the remaining rebels. Meanwhile, Mundus fell in battle. The empire motivated the Gepids to attack the Goths. They captured Sirmium, while a new commander was sent to reclaim Salona. King Theodahad was slain in favor of Vitigis. As Belisarius easily conquered southern Italy, plundering the resisting city of Naples, Vitigis withdrew his forces from Dalmatia and bought time to gather more troops, which allowed Belisarius to enter Rome and prepare for the upcoming siege. Meanwhile, Germanus finally restored order in the prefecture of Africa. By the end of the year, Hagia Sophia, the new great basilica of Constantinople, was completed and was inaugurated by the emperor and his patriarch. The Goths arrived before Rome and the siege began. Inside the Eternal City, Pope Silverius was accused of conspiring with the enemy. He was deposed by the Roman commander. Belisarius was outnumbered, but his proactive leadership and gradual reinforcements from Constantinople convinced Vitigis to abandon the siege. A high-ranking official, Narses, arrived in the peninsula, which destabilized the Roman high command, as he was in opposition to Belisarius. The two still managed to work together and relieved a trapped Roman force at Ariminum. However, it did not heal the rift between the two main generals. But despite this, Gothic strongholds continued to fall into Roman hands. Belisarius received the news that Mediolanum had defected to the Romans and awaited assistance from them. A Gothico-Burgundian army soon besieged the city. A rebellion in Armenia led to the death of Citas. In Arabia, the Ghassanids inflicted pressure on the Lakhmids. While further west, a Kutigo raid made many Roman prisoners. The successes of Germanus allowed him to return to Constantinople, and Solomon came back to Africa. Back in Italy, the mistrust cultivated between both sides of the Roman high command prevented Mediolanum from being reinforced. The few troops inside soon gave up the defense, and the second largest city of the peninsula was put to the torch. Such a setback convinced Emperor Justinian to recall Narses. With now complete control over the armies, Belisarius was able to make further progress. A Frankish army led by King Theodebert crossed the Alps, forced its way into the Po Valley, attacking both Romans and Ostrogoths, but soon, being harassed by disease, left Italy. It was now time to besiege Ravenna. Vitigis made the fateful decision to send a letter to Shah Khosrow, informing him of the large Roman mobilization on the Italian front. Khosrow took the opportunity, using Vitigis's proposal, Ghassanid aggression, and the Armenian revolt as casus belli. Several Mesopotamian cities were sacked. The formidable Antioch was ill prepared when the Persians arrived. The metropolis was rapidly stormed and destroyed. Its population was deported, and the Shah received payments from both the emperor and the Roman cities he spared. Danubian raids continued, and Justinian had to use diplomacy to deal with them. To the Ostrogoths, he offered generous terms, allowing them to retain control of northern Italy in order to reach a rapid peace and free up troops for the east. However, Belisarius, seeing that complete victory was near, was unwilling to let such a peace be concluded. When the Goths offered him to become the new Western Roman emperor, and betray Justinian. He made them believe that he was ready to accept. Entering Ravenna with his troops, he soon took control of the city directly. With most of Italy under Roman control, Belisarius returned to Constantinople alongside the captured king, Vitiges, who, just like Gelimer, was allowed a comfortable retirement inside the empire. The Gothic War, however, was not over. A new leader, Ildibad, won a victory against the Roman army. After a brief power struggle, Totila became king, which led to further Gothic successes. The heavy-handed Roman administration made the Lazica resentful. Khosrow exploited the situation and took control of the kingdom, while Belisarius arrived in Mesopotamia and attacked Persian territory. Now, a disaster of unprecedented scale occurred. A plague epidemic, appearing in the Egyptian city of Pelusium, rapidly spread and struck the urbanized eastern Mediterranean particularly hard. The disease reached Constantinople the following spring, killing massively. Tribonian was one of the victims, and soon the emperor seemingly contracted the plague. Theodora had to take the lead of the state. The Shah invaded yet again. This time, the impending menace of the epidemic and Belisarius' ruse limited the damage done by the Persians. However, the empress suspected disloyalty and recalled the general. In Italy, the capable Totila, profiting from the plague and Roman redeployment, crushed a large force at Faventia, won several more victories, reversed Roman gains, and captured Naples. The year is 543, the midpoint of Justinian's reign. The Roman Empire is in a state of crisis. The plague hits with full force, claiming millions of lives. Famines, rebellions, and a fragile regency threaten the integrity of the state. 4 different fronts are draining the resources and exert pressure from all sides. Despite a successful early reign, the situation is now dire. The military prospects of a rapid conquest of Italy disappeared, while the unending wars with Persia had already resumed. A long, Pyrrhic conflict is now inevitable.